Hey guys, welcome back to another Late Night Strange. And tonight we are going to be talking about realtors and some of their creepy paranormal encounters while showing a house or doing open house. One question I love asking realtors and the photographers is, have you ever experienced any paranormal activities while showing a house? I have taken great pleasures to ask some of the realtors I know and their photographers, but before we get into that, let's begin with the first story of the day. This first story comes from Caroline in Michigan, titled A Flooding by Hanging. I was selling a house that was in foreclosure for an elderly widow woman. It was a $500,000 house but decorated in the late 70s style, so it needed a lot of updating. While I was there painting and staging, all the faucets would turn on at the same time, all over the house. I would then have to go into each room and bathroom and kitchen to turn off the water. When the house was being inspected after going under contract, I held my breath hoping that the water faucets wouldn't turn on all at once with the inspector on site. The inspection was going well until I heard a very large stream of water flooding the basement. I rushed in and turned off the water at the main. I then had the plumbing fix and damage remedy. It turned out that the seller had forgotten to tell me that her husband had actually committed suicide by hanging himself on the water pipes in the basement. That exact pipe that broke. The second story comes from Kevin from Florida, a mystery at an open house. The home was a Mediterranean style and about 20 years old with a private indoor elevator. Because the weather was poor, only one tour was given. At the conclusion of the open house, I began shutting lights and locking doors, starting on the second floor. I decided not to take the stairs down and got into the elevator. I was alone, or so I thought. After entering the elevator, I closed the iron gate and hit the first floor button, waiting for the very slow descent down. As the elevator started moving down, the bottom of the door became visible and something caught my eyes. It was a glimpse of someone wearing black shoes walking towards the master bedroom. I felt a chill ran down my spine because the owners were out of town, and we only had one person show up to the open house, who I walked out. Once the elevator reached the first floor, I raced back upstairs and searched every nook and cranny, but no one was there. This third story comes from a real tall realtor. Location unknown. In 2016, I sold a home that have always gave me a creepy feeling anytime I went there during showing or inspections. It's hard to explain, but the place just had a cold, empty feeling to it that made the hair on my arms stand up. Shortly after, there was a younger couple that bought the home. It was the only thing that was available in the area at the time that met both their budget and checked most of their boxes. About a year after closing, the husband hung himself in the shed out back, and he was discovered by one of his children. Absolutely horrible and unsettling when I heard about it. A few months passed, and his widow had messaged me regarding mortgage questions. She told me that leading up to his passing, a lot of strange things had begun to happen in the home, and even before he took his life, they were convinced that the house had bad energy. She had mentioned that the neighbors told her that the previous owners were into witchcraft. So if you believe in all of that, I guess there's another layer to this story. Next story is from SD Native 88. Location unknown. I was doing an open house at a place that I knew that the owner had passed away naturally in, but I didn't think anything of it. So about halfway through the open house, some lady walks in and immediately goes, "Somebody died here recently and I can feel him." She then walks around and talked about his energy for about 10 minutes. Then as she's leaving, she tells me he's sitting in the chair next to me and doesn't appreciate me being in his house. I sat outside and just sent people in for the rest of the open house. That's pretty funny. Alright, next story is from Giovanni in Oregon. I scheduled an appointment with the listing agent to show an historical vacant house to some buyers. One of those buyers was a couple and their two school-aged children. We toured the main floor where one of the two pieces of antique furniture remained for staging, but it was overall cleared out. We walked upstairs, and in the master bedroom there was a bed, and in that bed was a very old lady. We left immediately, and I phoned the listing agent from the front yard. Apparently, the elderly lady was the homeowner who didn't like the assistant care facility she's been moved to, so she occasionally made her way back to the house for a nap. That's not a haunting, but it felt like one. Oh, that's a great story. All right, next story. This next story comes from Terry from Bellevue West. I was showing a new client a waterfront property on Lake Sammamish in Bellevue, Washington. It was a 2-story home with a daylight basement and a lovely lawn out to the lake. I was showing my client around the main floor of the home, chattering up the cabinets in the kitchen, when all of a sudden we started hearing a piano playing from the basement level. My client and I glanced at each other, thinking that it was a little bit strange. Soon after the piano started playing, we could hear voices, men and women, laughing and talking, and we could hear the shuffling of feet dancing across the hardwood floors down below. At that point, I walked over to the window facing the lake, fully expecting to see that there must have been some kind of party going on back there, and everybody had decided to come in or something. But when I looked outside, there was no evidence of anyone having been in the backyard. I then looked over to my client and said, I definitely had an appointment. I'm surprised they forgot that we were coming. I walked over to the door leading to the lower level. I opened the door and saw a staircase with the second door at the bottom of the staircase also closed. When I opened that door, the sound of voices and the piano music amplified. We could distinctly hear men and women's voices and could almost make out a conversation. I yelled down the stairs, "Realtor!" But the party continued. I walked to the halfway point down the staircase and yelled again, "Realtor!" At that moment, everything went dead quiet. I looked back up the staircase to my client and quietly mouthed, "Whoa, that's weird." She nodded affirmatively. I continued down to the end of the staircase and opened the door. Just inside the door was a small table with a vintage clock ticking away. I stepped into what appeared to be an elderly person apartment, and there, tucked around the corner, I saw it, a piano. But there was absolutely no one down there. I ran back up the stairs, nearly knocking my client over, and ran for the door. She, not knowing what I have seen, was right at my heels. We drove off as quickly as we can, realizing that I had not locked the door. I called the listing agent to inform her of the door and our experience. She gasped and said, "Oh my gosh, Terry, the owner's mother-in-law lived down there, and she passed 3 days ago." I said, well, she was having one hell of a party there then. This next story is from Anna Altic from Nashville, Tennessee. I have had quite a few unexplainable experiences showing properties, but here is my weirdest one. I was out with some first-time home buyers who were newer to the process, so I didn't know them super well yet. We had looked at 3 to 4 properties already and were headed into our last home, which was a 1930s bungalow. In Nashville, it's very common to show properties that have framed gold records up on the walls, and I like to try to see if I can figure out who the owner is from the awards they have won. After I'd gone through the house with my buyers, I went over to look at the gold record in the hallway so they could take a second look around the house and discuss. As I was standing in the hallway looking at the records, my throat started to get really scratchy, and then I started feeling really wheezy and short of breath. I casually yelled to the buyers, "Hey, do you guys see a cat in here anywhere? I feel like I'm having an allergy attack." It got bad enough that I was thinking about stepping outside when the husband rounded the corner, took one look at me, and very curtly said, "We have to go now, and I mean now." So we hustled out, and it was awkward because I wasn't sure if I said or done something that upset him. Later that evening, the wife calls me and was kind of sheepish. I immediately reassured her that I was glad she called and welcomed any feedback if there was something that I could do differently next time to make her husband more comfortable. She hemmed and hawed for a second and then said, "Anna, you are probably going to think I'm crazy or we're crazy, but when John rounded the corner today, he saw something behind you and it was squeezing your neck. I still sold him a house, but definitely not that house." Last on the list is Mauricio, the guy that sold one of Michael Jackson's home that he was leasing at the time of his death in 2009. According to Mauricio, Jackson actually died in the secondary bedroom suite of the property. Following a hard-learned lesson years ago, Mauricio had been extremely careful ever since about not leaving anything on in the house and remembered to lock everything. So after a long day of showing the properties to serious buyers and curious Jackson fans alike, when Mauricio returned the next morning to find that the secondary suite bedroom window had been open and the stereo blaring, he was alarmed and surprised. So that evening, when he left the house, he checked the window, he checked the stereo and all the lights, what he felt like 50 times. In the Dealmaker, Mauricio said that the next day when he came back, the lights were all on again, music was playing, and the window was opened. Immediately, he called the owner to double check to see if anybody has been in there. The owner then said, no one has been in there or set foot in the home since he locked it up. Mauricio said that the bedroom was known as Jackson's favorite place in the house, and that he used to listen to music in there while looking out the window at the back garden. The only possible explanation, therefore, that he would come up with for the blaring music was Jackson's spirit was still in the house. So later on, what convinced Mauricio to think this was Michael Jackson was when it came time to close on the house, the buyer actually wanted to pull out because one of the motors that was operating the chandelier up and down wasn't working. As the buyer left into the other room, Mauricio looked up towards the chandelier and said, "Michael, please help me out here." He then walked over to the switch, and by some miracle, the chandelier started going up and down again. After that incident, the deal was saved. He also said, "I definitely felt Jackson's presence. Just to be clear, I've never believed in spirits and ghosts up until my mother-in-law died. And then I had an experience that was super real, super physical, and then I started to become more open to it. And as I become more open to it, we started to encounter ghosts or spirits." Alright, now let's get into some of the stories that I have asked realtors and their photographers. So one story in particular was one of my realtor's photographer. So she came over to my place when I was actually selling my home. And I've asked her this question: hey, have you ever experienced any paranormal activities while, taking photos of a home? And at first she was kind of like, kind of, and I was like, oh, okay, like tell me something that kind of spooked you a little bit, and she finally opened up and said, well, there was one time when I was shooting, photos for one of my realtors, and they went to this older home. And before they went in there, the owner said that, none of the electrical worked in the house at all. So as they're walking around taking pictures, they went upstairs, and while they're just upstairs walking room to room, they walked into this room that felt extremely weird. It was a heavy, heavy feeling that, was in that room. And as they were just kind of walking around, ignoring the heavy presence, the ceiling fan started twirling around. It literally just turned on and it started spinning. Spinning, and they were like, this is kind of odd. I thought the owner said that, there was no electricity in this home. And then right when they said that, the fan just suddenly stopped turning. It started slowing down and it stopped. And then it kind of creeped them out. So they were like, oh, this is kind of strange. So they went back downstairs and got the heck out of there, That was one of the stories that she told me. But she was like, there's some houses that you walk into that are just not right. And those are the house where it gives you the creeps, or you can feel your hair stand up the back of your neck or your arms. And I've noticed that too, especially when I was looking for a house to buy. But there's one house that my brother walked in, and he was looking for a house at that time too. He went to this place in this older neighborhood, and while he walked in, there was crosses, Jesus cross, everywhere. I mean, it was on the walls, it was on every freaking door. It was just everywhere you went into a room, there was like a cross in every single wall. And he was like, man, this is kind of strange. This is very strange. And that house too had a really heavy presence. And sometimes you wonder, is okay, why does this house have so many crosses? And yeah, you can only guess. And your guess is just as good as mine. But the only reason that I would put a cross in every single room, every single corner of the home, is if I love the Holy Bible a lot and I just want to collect crosses and throw them in every single corner of my home, or I'll have them up because of evil spirits. Yes. So I'll tell a story here about my ex-sister-in-law, who is still a realtor till this day. She mentioned that she was doing an open house one day, and in the morning everything's fine, but in the Midwest here it gets dark around 4:30. Sometimes they have to be there till 6 p.m. And while she's set up in the morning, nothing really happened. It was a really beautiful house, big house, and it was of course all empty because she was doing a open house showing. And she was there, everything went all good. But when the sun set, that's when she said that the atmosphere of the house kind of changes, where it kind of got a little bit eerie, kind of creepy. And that's when she started hearing footsteps upstairs. Most of the times when you hear something like that, you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, did I miss somebody that is still in the house that's not, gone yet? But at this point, she knew that everybody went out already, and just hearing footsteps upstairs, she kind of went up there, peeked a little bit, nothing, she didn't see anybody, came back downstairs, was cleaning up, and then she heard it again, and she was like, oh crap, all right, I'm out of here. So she just kind of like left the place. So that was one of the stories that, you hear a lot of footstep stories from realtors. But another one was she was actually showing a house, and the buyers were from Florida, so she had a Skype or FaceTime the buyers. And while she was kind of showing this house, the house is a little bit smaller. What was it? It was a 2-story house, so she had to go upstairs. And when she went upstairs, there was this really long hallway that went all the way to the top balcony porch, or yeah, it's kind of like a porch, upstairs porch. But to get to that porch, there was like 3 rooms, I believe, 3 or 4 rooms that you had to walk past. So she was showing the bedrooms, showing the first one, nothing happened. Showing the number 2, nothing happened. And then she went to, I believe it was the 3rd or the 4th one. And while she was approaching this door, this door was actually closed. She said she felt a super heavy, dark presence right behind that door. And she said that she was kind of like, she was like, what the heck, as she walked closer and closer to this door, the presence got more heavier and heavier. And she felt that, she said that it felt so weird, to the point where she didn't even show the buyers that was actually there was actually another room. So she was just kind of like, oh, and here we go to the balcony. So she just went straight to the balcony. Right when she walked outside, everything felt fine. And then, of course, in order to get out again, you had to go through that door, through the hallway, and go back downstairs, because it was just like a closed off balcony, upstairs. So as she was walking back, she, of course, didn't show the buyer that door again, and she just kind of walked past it. But she said that right when she opened the door to walk back in, she could feel the heavy, heavy, dark feeling, and it was as if somebody was right behind that door, waiting for her to walk in. She said she was so freaked out, she just kind of walked downstairs real quick, got the heck out of the house, and she's still here. So I guess no demon aid or anything like that. But other than that, yes, I give props to a lot of you realtors out there who's shown houses, especially knowing that person had died in there, where you had to go into those rooms to show it. But I don't know, you had to be, I don't know, you had to have a whole new level of faith to do that kind of job. And I tell you, I couldn't do it. You couldn't pay me enough money to do it. Heck no. And of course, I'm a scaredy cat too. There was one time in my life where I thought about being a ghost hunter, so I was gonna join the local paranormal investigation crew. And it just so happened I worked with one of the owner's son and kind of talked to him about, like, okay, what does it take for me to become a ghost hunter? Like, what's the fee to get in? And he's like, oh, it's free actually, but there's like a trial run you have to do. And I was like, okay, like, what's that trial run? He's like, I'm gonna give you an EVP. For those of you who don't know what an EVP is, it pretty much record voices, distorted voices of spirits if they're trying to communicate with you. But he said, you know what? I'm gonna give you an EVP and a flashlight, and we're gonna go to one of the most haunted places in town. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna go in the place alone, and I'm going to tell you exactly where to go on the walkie-talkie. I want you to go all the way upstairs or in the basement and go to the room where, you know, reports of people seeing these spirits or having these paranormal experience has happened. I want you to sit down and just ask questions while alone. And I'm like, screw that. I want to be the guy that sits in the truck and listens to whatever's going on the computers. Like, can I do that? It's like, oh no, that's just TV shows. We do this the old school way. So I was like, yep, my dream of being a ghost hunter has been shattered from that point on, because I think that was my audition and I failed. But other than that, yeah, that's all the story that I have for you right now. But I just want to say, for those of you who like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. And don't forget to put a comment down in the comment below. If you guys have any kind of crazy realtor ghost stories at all, please let me know. Put it down in the comments. I would love to read them. And but yeah, in between stories, I just like to add these kind of ghost stories in here because this is some things that I like talking about. So, and of course, everybody loves Bigfoot, and I see that Bigfoot's getting a lot of views right now. But I still want to talk about the things that I want to talk about. So, alright guys, I will see you guys on the next episode of The Late Night Strange. Goodbye guys, and stay spooky.